Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thanks for coming out today, hanging out here. We are here today. Our topic, we're going to meld in some of what we didn't get to in shelter last week, and then it ties really closely in with what we're going to talk about today also is transportation. So just a couple of announcements to get us started. I sent out the link for the Google sign up for any of you who are interested in signing up to have a conversation about being a TA. So I put that in the chat. What's really cool about the TA groups is that they come from all majors, all years, all interests, all countries, all walks of life, all over the place. And that creates a really beautiful and diverse community that then nurtures that next group of BiSci 3 students. And so if you have hesitations about being a TA, maybe, well, I'm only a first-year student, or I don't know if I can do that, know that there's a semester of training that helps to prepare you for that, and that we aren't sending you into the situation without any kind of experience or community with which to do the hard work. So I've really enjoyed the TA conversations that I've had so far with folks. That's really beautiful. The community is shaping up in a really beautiful way, so I'm excited about that. So that link is there for anybody if you choose to have a conversation in the future. An opportunity for you way back in week 4, found at the end of week 4 in your journal, is Resolve a Nature Mystery. It's coming up, the due date for that is coming up this Friday. So if you'd like to do that 1 point of extra credit and hand that into your TA, that's available to you until this coming Friday. You'll notice that we are scaffolding sort of the end, believe it or not, the end of the semester assignments, so that remembering that your TAs are also students and have other classes and responsibilities and finals to study for, that we don't want to put all the weight on them at the end of the semester. So respecting your TAs, we try to stack these up in a gentler way than having everything due in week 15. So that's part of this is the Resolve a Nature Mystery. Coming up also, you'll be having a reflection action assignment, or the reflection action assignment you're having this week, about imagining a new story and how that looks for you, a cultural shift of story. So what can you imagine for yourself? Those strings of imagination are really beautiful to practice. How are you going to find your path in this way that's inspiring to you? So for our centering today, I'd like you to put your feet on the floor, and as you take in a couple of good deep breaths, maybe putting your hands on your rib cage, you can feel how your ribs expand and then contract as you exhale. Expand and contract, and then also realizing that your spine is doing the same thing. Our bodies are built to be flexible like this, in the in and the out, the expansion, and understanding that we are made to be flexible. Our bodies are made to be flexible. Flexibility helps us survive. So how flexible are you when it comes to change? When it comes to making new pathways for yourself, whether that's neural pathways, whether that's physical pathways, what does that look like for you? So take a moment and talk to your neighbor about this. How flexible are you when it comes to change? So change can be challenging. Is there anybody who would like to speak to your ideas of change? Change is something I struggle with. In the moment, when somebody changes a plan on me, it's something that I really am challenged by. I like knowing what's going on. I like knowing what people expect of me. And so change can be very challenging. I am often very slow to accommodate change as it's happening. So there's lots of reasons that I could reflect on that. Is there anybody else who would like to speak to your thoughts on change? So in this part of the course, I am encouraging you to consider options. Not that I'm telling you that you have to change. I'm asking you to consider options for yourself. How can you lower your significantly lower your ecological footprint and maybe work less, have more fun, be more connected, be more free and creative, and become more fully yourself by some of the changes that you can implement? So as always, we only have 50 minutes. There is no way that I can possibly share with you all of the details. And so my job is to nudge you, encourage you to find the things that inspire you, and then you get to explore those on your own, and continue the exploration and potentially the change. So this book I found really interesting. It was released in the spring of 2020, and I took it in while I was sheltered at home during the pandemic. And I found this little tidbit that I thought was really interesting. They referenced this video that we're going to watch now. Abby, could you show the Futurama video, please?
American cities fundamentally altered how we built themselves over the last 60 years. And to me, the place that it really started was the 1939 World's Fair. At what was the most successful World's Fair in history, the most successful exhibit was one called Futurama.
To help us get a glimpse into the future of this unfinished world of ours, there has been created for the New York World Fair a thought-provoking exhibit of the developments ahead of us. A vivid tribute to the American scheme of living. Come, let's travel into the future. What will we see?
Futurama portrayed the future of the city in that distant year, 1960.
What we are now seeing is a vision, an artistic conception, which may undergo many changes as it develops into the great realities of tomorrow.
And it portrayed a city that was car-driven, lots of open spaces. You could live in the country and drive to your job downtown, and you'd have the best of two worlds.
Over space, man has begun to win victory.
Suburban splendor and urban excitement. Not coincidentally, Futurama was sponsored by General Motors, and they were promoting what we wanted. And it's my sense that 1939, just before the war, clouds are looming over Europe. We go off to war, and we have this image, this mulling in our minds, and we come back and we implement Futurama.
15 million GIs came back from the war, clamoring for new homes and a piece of land in the country. Almost overnight, suburbia was born.
There's a whole new idea about American communities. And my father was a part of that because he was a builder. And so in our area in Kansas City, Missouri, his employer, the J.C. Nichols Company, was finishing a home a day for years following the Second World War. And this was all about a new, hopeful American dream.
So the idea that this suburbia was born of those times, post-war, people wanting a little square of land of their own, and then driving into the city, the best of both worlds. Pretty exciting. Also sponsored by General Motors. What an interesting, not coincidence. And now William Kunstler says, the most ecological, harmful form of land settlement ever invented. So how we choose, how we have chosen these places where we live and are required to drive to get groceries, to get to our work, to get to social interactions, you know, downtown with people. So suburbia, the way that this cultural evolution has happened, being connected by cars. 91.7% of the households in the United States have access to at least one car. 8.3% of households without access to a car. So when we think back to that food deserts slide of people that don't have access to grocery stores because they don't live close enough or have a car to get there to get fresh food. So all of these pieces connect: food and shelter and transportation. So we've been through the ups and downs of food, and then there are different ways of creating your story with shelter as well, just like with food. So this is an activity that you can do. You can think about, if you have $20,000 to build a home, what do you need to thrive is a big question in this part of BISCI, the third section of the course. Where would it be? How big would it be? What materials would you use? Where would you get the materials? Who would design it? What kind of design? Who would build it? So this is an activity that you might want to take into your lab. What could there be when you consider this? You might also, I think is important, considering your main thing, the discussion post from a couple of weeks back. What's really important to you about where you live? What do you need? So I'm going to show you a couple of examples of people who took this challenge seriously and are now living out this dream. So this is the story of Jess and Dan, and they designed their tiny home in a computer program called SketchUp. They built it themselves with materials that they could salvage from other places or had minimal expense. And so when we consider this, it's also, you know, way less expensive to live in this house, way less to heat it, way less to cool it, way less cleaning time. They don't have a mortgage. This is a huge point. A mortgage typically is 1/3 or more of your monthly income going out to pay the mortgage. And that goes on for 20 or 30 years in order to purchase a home in a lot of cases. So what happens when we think outside the box? They own less stuff. They have less stuff that they need to maintain. All of these things are considerations, options. Here's another tiny home. This is for a family of 4 people, husband, wife, 2 kids, and a dog. They moved from a 2,000 square foot house to this 267 square foot house, and now they can thrive on just one income. The mom says we're more content, more colorful, more outdoorsy, more rooted, et cetera, et cetera. And the idea being that they feel more connected when they can spend more time being connected because they aren't spending that time making money to pay for their house or taking care of the upkeep of their house. So more outdoorsy is an interesting point. When you live in this space, you go outside more often to have your free time, have your free space. And the average American spends, according to the Environmental Protection Agency, the average American spends over 90% of their life indoors, either in buildings or in automobiles. And we've already discovered that we have this natural connection to the outdoors. So considering the stuff, how much do we need? And that's different for each person, what needs are. And so how can this work, right? How could this work for you? How could it work for me? Something that I need is being more connected to my neighbors in my neighborhood. That's something that's really important to me. Was a tenet of my family growing up, and then that's something that I wanted to carry over in my grown-up life. And so creating these places, these thriving villages in the places where we live, considering what we can do for each other. The idea of maybe I don't need to go and buy a drill because I know that my neighbor has one. I can just, for as often as I use a drill, I can just borrow his. And then he can borrow my snow thrower. And we can exchange stuff. We don't both need to own all the things. And so sharing, as I reflect upon it, that's a skill that we learn as kids, and then it tends to fade as we grow up, when we become more independent and less interdependent. So Charles Eisenstein is a writer, a speaker that talks about these things. Charles Eisenstein says the gift economy represents a shift from consumption to contribution, transaction to trust, scarcity to abundance, and isolation to community. So how can we think about that? Build on the things that we found that we care about. He points out that money is an agreement. It's a man-made invention, and scarcity is built into that system of economism that we've talked about. So it throws us into a competition, and many human basic needs don't get met. So when we were talking about food the other day, and the research shows that there's enough food on the planet for everyone to have some, what happens if we extend the gift economy and we're sharing more of what we offer or what we have to others? So not hoarding things, but sharing them. It can happen with food, it can happen with tools, it can happen with books, there are places that have tool libraries where you can go to a place in the community and sign out the hammer, the saw, the things that you need. So this is just one opportunity of building those communities. And when we're thinking about the balance of how we create our shelter, where we choose our shelter to be, how does that relate to our stuff? How does that relate to where we need to go, the transportation? And so that brings me then to the transportation choices. What is it that we need personally? What is it that we need for our community? It seems like we have humans have lived for thousands of years, even hundreds of years, without having these personal transportation ways. And now it seems we must have them. 91% of Americans having that opportunity. So that's interesting, an evolution of culture. So let's talk about this. What's great about cars and what's not so great? So I'd like you to brainstorm for a second for yourself and then talk to your partner. So I would love to have a few of you speak up to either of these. Let's do what's great about cars first. What's great about cars? Thanks, Leah.
Um, I think for me, I like back home, I would always need to like use my car or something because the area I live in, it's like it's not really like there's public transportation or like it's walkable. So I'd need to use my car. But I think like we can like lessen it and use public transportation more if it's available. Like it still like does something, but it's like lessening using your car and doing all that stuff. But
Yeah,
yeah.
we'll get to that. Thank you for that point. Yes, so public transportation as an option. Lots of ups and downs about that.
Um, Also the fact that we were talking if it's super hot outside and you have to walk, just get in your car. If it's super cold outside, you can just get in your car. It's super easy to go places. Like I know that I miss driving so much. Being able to just in my own time, like get my stuff together, get in my car and go rather than having to be like, oh, when does this bus come? Oh my God, I just missed the bus. When is the next one? Like something like that. It's just more, it's a lot of convenience with a car.
Agreed. Very true. Convenience of the car. Anything else great about cars? For me, it's the place where I get to be alone. I love that, right? I can listen to the music I want. I can listen to the book I want. It's just me most often in my car. And I get pretty excited about those times when I just get to choose. My children don't, if they're in the car, I let them listen to the music they want. But when it's me, then I get to listen to the book I want. I'm listening to this great book on Audible right now. And so, like, it's my time in my car and it's super convenient. So there are some great things about cars. What else? What's not so great about cars?
Something that I said was that it causes almost a feedback loop because you have no job because you need a car, and you have no car because you need a job.
Yeah.
The reliance on car and car culture makes it so that nobody who needs to get a car can get one because it's become inaccessible. So yeah, even though it allows for accessibility with like more and more jobs, a lot more opportunities, there's already a ceiling that many people have hit.
Yeah. Right. It shuts out the opportunities for people. There's someone back there. Thank you. Not so great.
Because of cars, it's changed how we build communities. So for a couple reasons, number one, uprooting a lot of different ecosystems. Like if you think about like a highway, the amount of deforestation that goes into that is definitely really bad. And also, just in general, because people are driving more often to places where they want to go, it's not as easy to walk to places. So there's more distance and kind of connecting to like saying we want to live as a community, and it's harder to do that when you have a community that's structured around cars.
Cars and roads. Yes. True. We're going to talk more about that too. Thank you for your points. Anybody else want to speak to either? All right, we'll expand on some of these. So we've already talked about the gallon of gas. So 1 gallon of gas yields 20 pounds of carbon dioxide to the atmosphere. So we've already said that cars are the most polluting thing on our planet, right? Average of 10 tons of greenhouse gases per car per year. So that's a downer for sure. And then when we consider the full cost accounting of cars, when we think about how much we're paying for our car, so the gas is one thing and how much we're paying per gallon, But understanding that the price of gasoline does not cover all the full cost accounting of what goes into getting that gasoline into the tank under the ground where you pump it from. So under this method where we're paying $3.85, or the other day $3.49, I think I paid, there's no accounting for the property acquisition, the exploration, the development costs. And so if we really thought about how much a gallon of gas costs, and if you've traveled to other places, I understand that gas is more expensive in other places. And so the cost is a consideration, and the cost of the car itself, right? Then we have to consider the cost of life. Car accidents are the leading cause of death for people ages 5 to 29. 40,000 people approximately die every year in crashes on US roadways. So the economic and societal impact of these crashes is $871 billion in America annually. And then there's the pedestrian and the bicycle fatalities that continue to rise, often due to distracted driving when we're trying to do too much at one time. So 7,000 pedestrians were killed in motor vehicle crashes last year. So lots of costs that we need to consider. And then speaking to your point about roads and how those create an impact on the communities. What's our cost to the building of communities? See, Abby, if you can start this video.
Right, first evidence-based research of the problem of traffic on neighborhood streets. It provided the foundational arguments for traffic calming.
Donald Appengard, who is a professor, conducted a series of studies on 3 different streets in San Francisco, chosen to be as identical as possible in every dimension except for one, the amount of traffic on each street. And what Donald Appengard was able to show, that just the mere presence of cars with the envelope of danger that they project around them, and the noise and the pollution, crushes the quality of life in our neighborhoods.
What's really interesting about the graphics in the local streets and what they really provided was it removed us from just looking at specific numbers, people being hit or killed on the streets, but actually showing that there was this other way that we could measure the environmental impacts of traffic on neighborhood streets. Things such as a light traffic street help knit a community together. And in contrast, a heavily trafficked street would actually rip it apart. And fewer social ties were able to be created.
This chart here shows the social interaction on these 3 different streets. So each line shows a connection between one person on the street and another. There are just a lot fewer lines on the heavily trafficked street as opposed to the moderate or the light traffic street, which clearly has a lot more interconnection. So what these charts are showing is that people on the light traffic street know more people, have more friends than on the heavily trafficked street. On the light traffic street, people have on average 3 friends per person. And on the heavily trafficked street, 0.9 friends per person. The fact that the amount of traffic on the street on which you live can impact the number of friends you have in the world is of enormous significance. The other thing that Donald Appengard plotted on these charts are these little dots that indicate where people gather. So it shows on the heavily trafficked street, there are a much smaller number of dots, and there are only a handful of places where people would gather on their street. The fact that they were able to measure and quantify the reduction in number of friends, the number of acquaintances that's caused by traffic is enormously important, and it helps to illuminate the invisible harm that's done by traffic every day.
You can stop it there. Thank you. So I feel this in my neighborhood. So this is my neighborhood. My home is marked here with this red X thing. And this route is Route 45, which is, it's a larger size road. This is the Route 26 that goes this way. And what I have noticed is that both me and my children, the friends that we have and keep the closest, are in this corner. So documenting my own research about that is that I don't actually know the people that live across the street from me. I know the people that live up here in this corner where I don't have to cross a major street to get to their home, to play in the neighborhood with the kids. And I think that that's just really interesting, right? The other side of town is not that far away, but it's bounded by these two significant highways that go in front of and beside my home. And so consider your house, think about where you live, and just reflect for a moment about how that may have shaped or how transportation shaped your growing up. Or maybe it didn't too. It's interesting. Everybody, 352 different stories in this room is pretty exciting. Is there anybody who would like to share something that they are thinking about related to their story? Shelter, transportation related?
So where I live is really heavily affected by redlining, and I actually live right on like the quote unquote red line. And because of the red line, I never went north of my house. Like I know I never knew anyone north of my house because that's like the more dangerous spot to be. And everyone's like, don't go there, don't go there. So I only have friends who are on the south side of the line because those were just the people that like I was told like that they're okay to be around.
Interesting. Can you say more about what the red line is for folks that don't know?
Yeah, so basically, I mean, I'm from St. Louis, Missouri, and so for us, it was like in the 60s, due to segregation, usually what happens is that like government would section areas off for the people of color to live as like a kind of forced segregation thing, and then not provide money to those areas, leading for like higher poverty levels, food deserts, like, which then leads to various other things.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that story. Is there anybody else who would like to share an experience?
Growing up, I lived in a cul-de-sac, and I noticed there's a lot more community involvement with the surrounding neighbors. All the kids and parents would get together. We'd have barbecues together, go to the neighbor's pool. And compared to where I live now in a much more urban environment, I noticed that there's a lot less community involvement. Neighbors aren't as friendly. You don't see kids running around as much, and I think that's more than likely heavily due to the much more heavy involvement of traffic compared to the cul-de-sac.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Cul-de-sacs are cool. So there are places that do it differently than we do it here. So considering cities as places to live, looking at the European template. So when we think about these big, this could be a roadway, and at some point in history, I'm sure that it was, and now it's been opened as this public space. So consider this, Allen Street here in State College, from the intersection of College Avenue up even just one block. Imagine if that was closed to traffic. So I'll let you picture where I mean, Allen Street. Yep, goes by the shoe store, Appalachian Outdoors, the corner room, up that way. And so what would that look like if that was closed? So talk to your neighbor for a moment about that and maybe share your opinion. Should that be closed? This has been on the docket for State College Borough for a long time. Should it be closed? Should it remain open? What do you think? I'd love to hear some opinions. There's somebody way in the back row.
So I'm also from a college town, if you've ever heard of Westchester University. It's a much more suburban area, much more less rural than like around State College. And I have like a similar situation where they don't do it permanently, but in the summer, every single weekend, they close the main two roads of like the downtown area. And they started doing that, I feel like right after COVID, maybe, or during COVID, and then they kept it. And what's happened is I feel like it's really transformed the town's community. It's brought in a lot more business because people come now from other towns to Westchester because they like the vibe. And then other towns around us have now been inspired, but it's like, it's really great. People like, there's live music and there's kids playing with chalk, or it's like I'll even be drawing in the streets and like stuff like that. And it's just been such a nice opportunity.
Thanks for sharing that story. Cool.
Hello. I lived in the UK, and I don't know if you guys know Regent Street, but it's like the tourist attraction, like Christmas lights. And they're slowly closing it down to be a walkable area. And like the big idea was like traffic. What are we gonna do? And I think for like those streets here, like you worry about traffic, but really it's just brought down traffic because they go to the surrounding areas. So I feel like, yeah, I like
Yeah.
it.
So it's worked and you like it. Interesting. Other opinions?
I feel like whenever it does close, you see a lot more connections within the communities, especially with State College students and university students and like people living in State College. I see a lot more connection that way. And additionally, we're talking about like how dangerous it is at night. You have the lines for the bars, and then you just have people walking across the sidewalk at McClanahan's. I can remember like so many people just being in the middle of the road, especially with that alleyway. So just
Yep.
closing it would just probably save a lot of people from harm.
I watched that last weekend when I was at Zemos. Yes. Go ahead.
There's this town by me. It's like 15 minutes away. It's called Red Bank, and it's a pretty big like shopping area that a lot of people will go to. They have a bunch of stores, restaurants, stuff like that. And so in the summertime, they'll have like the main street closed for people to walk around, and the wintertime it's open. But it's a little annoying sometimes when I'm not trying to just shop and I'm trying to just drive through because there's this bridge and it gets so backed up with traffic because the road is closed. But it's pretty nice too, like when you're there to have that area just open.
Right. So the ups and the downs, the traffic congestion, the safety, all these things to weigh in on, I think is why State College has not made a choice. But then we think about the vehicle trips that we make, the times that we do jump in a car and go someplace. I just re-looked this up, and the research shows that more than 40% of vehicle trips are less than 2 miles. And in fact, 28% of vehicle trips are 1 mile or less. So it takes me, even if I'm going kind of slowly, like 15 minutes to walk a mile. That's a leisurely mile, right? And so what does this do? You know, if I'm driving from one store in the shopping center to another store in the shopping center, or if I'm driving my kid to a house that's just on the other side of town. So considering how fast are we really going if we do this full cost accounting, is it saving you time by the time I find my keys, by the time I consider the stops I made to fill up with gas, by the time I consider all the time and energy that I'm putting into my car? Yes, there are obviously times. My parents live 100 miles away, so it's obviously I'm going to hop in my car and I'm going to go visit them. But for these shorter trips that are sending that pollution into the air, that are decreasing our exercise, how is it that we could really consider our cars? This is something that you can do, a transportation time audit. You know, calculate the time that goes into driving, maintaining your car, getting in, getting out, parking, stoplights, all those things that go into when we choose to use our cars. So if we think about lowering our transportation footprint, what is really possible? What are the other options? So we talk about public transportation, and there's lots of ups and downs, and a couple of you have already brought this up. I could do this. I actually, from Pine Grove Mills, they've now stopped that bus route. But what happens when you're running just a couple minutes late and you miss that bus? What happens when it isn't an option for you? And yet, what happens when it is an option for you? When do you take advantage of the possibilities that are offered in whatever area it is that you live? So there's a long list of pros and cons related to public transportation. And then what about bikes, right? When we consider the average fuel economy for a new vehicle in 2023, average fuel economy was 24 miles per gallon. So when we think about the efficiency of cycling someplace, if we're going to go for, you know, if we're going to bike even 3 miles, it's pretty quick to bike 3 miles. So we can consider the ups and downs of that. We need to consider weather, and we need to consider how much we're carrying and the options of that. If we're looking just at fuel economy, so if we compare so if I eat a snack, if I eat 100 calories, that's going to power me to bike for 3 miles, 100 calories. It's going to power my car, 100 calories will power my car for 280 feet. So when we compare the calories in and out, a gallon of gas has 31,000 calories. And so that's 930 bike miles. So when we really compare, you know, there's a 50-fold reduction in our ecological footprint for as much as we can bike. And there are some places in this world that are set up more for bicycling. These are the cycling lanes in Europe, right? And then around here, there are these signs on campus, right? PSU, Bicycle Friendly University. What do you think? Is that a true statement? Talk to your neighbor. That was a pretty abrupt and robust conversation for a short period of time. Sounds like some of you have some particular opinions and views on this. Anybody want to share? Go ahead, Gavin. Yes.
Well, I would say that for the most part, I'm not the biggest fan of bikers. All right. But I will say that in a pinch, those spin bikes really do come in handy.
Nice.
Because if you're late and you get on one of those and you just start gunning it, you know, he was telling me you can get up to like 25 miles an hour. And you can get there really quickly. So
Yeah.
I think that they are necessary in certain situations.
Got it. And why aren't you a fan of them, bikers?
Well, where I'm from, I'm actually from the same town that chick over there was from, Westchester.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's no sides of the road. So you got to go around. And then if there's someone coming like on the other side, then you got to like wait. And then you got to like slow down. It's just not the best.
It's not built for safety.
Yeah, it's really not.
The driver or the
No.
biker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they always got those like skin tight suits on. And it's just like, come on, man.
Choice, personal choice. Yes, we can't do anything about that part of it. Yes.
Yeah, when you were talking about it, we said that actually for like a lot of instances, I think we would rather have a car, and it is important. Like, it is certain like a lot of stuff is under 2 miles or whatever. But like, if like we were on like to go to Giant, we'd much rather have a car because also you gotta think like how are we gonna get back with all of our groceries? Like, if you get a lot of groceries, you're definitely gonna need a trunk of a car, and like there's a lot of other instances where it is gonna be quicker, like regardless of a 2 mile walk will be quicker to drive, even if you hit every red light and have to stop and get gas.
Yep. So what are all the factors that weigh into that choice, right? There are lots of them. And so that's why it's your choice, right? You get to choose what works best. Any other comments about bike-friendly campus?
I think that our campus would be more bike friendly if the bikers followed the rules of the road. Because a lot of the bikers, they just like think they're better than the people in the cars, and they'll like swerve around the cars and almost hit the people walking.
Yeah.
So like even though it's like a more like eco-friendly like mode of transportation, like they should still be aware of the other people around them.
Agreed. Yes. Was there somebody else over here too? Yes.
I really like bikes, to be honest. They're like very nostalgic. I remember riding bikes when I was younger and like getting my shoelaces caught in the pedals and falling. It's like it's great. I love bikes. But it's honestly kind of an experience here. Like I honestly catch myself looking both ways, not for cars, but for bikes and scooters, because it's like I might get hit. But honestly, it's great. I love it. And sometimes I wave to them. It's like, yeah, bike. Come on.
Bike. Dude, nice. Yeah, so all of this goes into it, right? The safety, how the campus is laid out, and considering how safe that really is. On Thursday, we are going to pick up here the idea of the green triangle. Please note that your discussion post, hang on one second, your discussion post will open today, but it directly relates to our class on Thursday. So it's your choice whether to jump in or whether to wait. Thank you. Have a beautiful day.